Hi everyone, it's Róisín from CuriOdyssey. Have you ever wondered how much water is on planet Earth? If you look at a map of the Earth, you can see that it's mostly water. In fact, about 71% of Earth's surface is water. We're a blue planet. So, how come we're always talking about drought in California? Today I want to learn a little bit more about what the water on our planet really looks like and where it is. We're also going to learn a bit about some ways that we can use water even more efficiently. And I also want to talk about a really interesting innovation and some ideas for how we might be able to get our drinking water.
Here we have exactly 1,000 milliliters of water. This represents all of the water that is on planet Earth. How much of that water do you think is salt water and how much fresh water? Let me show you.
97% of the water on our planet is salty. That leaves only 3% as fresh water. That's like if we took only 30 milliliters out of our original 1,000 milliliters. That doesn't leave a whole lot of drinking water for the 7.8 billion people that call Earth home. And let's think a little bit about where that fresh water is. What do you think? Where is most of the fresh water on planet Earth? If you guessed trapped in ice, you are correct! And if you didn't guess that, don't feel bad because I don't know why you would know that. Ice is the frozen form of fresh water. And about 68% of the fresh water on Earth is ice. Not so easy to drink that. Another 30% of the fresh water is underground. That groundwater lives in big underground reservoirs called aquifers. People can drink water from aquifers. If you have well water, for example, you're drinking water from your local aquifer. You might even have seen groundwater before. If you've been at the beach and you've dug a deep hole and found a spot where the water just keeps filling in, even if you're not letting waves go into it, that's groundwater. But this water can be hard to access, and it's also pretty expensive to get to. Alright, so what does that leave us with? Well, if of our fresh water, 68% is ice, and 30% is groundwater, what does that leave? 2%. It leaves 2%. 2% of the fresh water on Earth is easy to get to. It's in rivers and lakes and streams. That is not very much water to share not only between us and all of our human communities, but also with animals that need fresh water. Animals like Gunner, our river otter, need to share fresh water with us. So let's review. Here's all the water on planet Earth. This first part, 97% is salt water in our oceans. Here is our water trapped in ice. Here is our underground water in aquifers. And this little teeny tiny bit is all the water that is easy to get to in lakes and rivers.
And don't worry too much, of course I'm gonna drink this water.
In fact, I'm curious to learn more about how we use water in our homes in the United States. Let's check out this weird donut graph to learn more. So I can see from here in the blue and the kind of weird like jean colored part that actually in urban areas like cities and suburbs, a lot of the water, looks like about 60% of the water is used in houses. And a lot of it, more than half, is used outside for things like pools and watering your lawn. So I'm wondering, what ideas do you have at your home to use less water outside? Let's think a little bit more about our inside water use too. This graph is called a pie chart. Oh, that makes me kind of hungry. Right, moving on, water. So you can see how we use a lot of our water inside. Almost a quarter of our water is from flushing the toilet. That's crazy.
Now that we know a little bit more about where we use water in our houses, I want to share some of the ideas that I use at home to use less water.
I try to save water when I'm done with it to water my plants. So when I need to change my dog's water, I just pour it into this pitcher and save it for later. Ooh, idea! I can also use our nice clean drinking water from our experiment to give my dogs fresh water. One good thing to know about me is that I have become, in the last couple of years, mildly obsessed with houseplants. So I'm always really excited to have some leftover water to water my plants with. Some of this water is actually from my rain collection. I got that idea from educator Carmen. If you like plants like me, you could also try having some dry plants around. This one is dried rosemary that my mom gave me. No water required! And since we noticed in our pie chart that about a quarter of our water use is from flushing the toilet, I have to mention, if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down.
We all know by now it's really important to wash your hands for a good 20 seconds. But that doesn't mean that you need to have the water on for 20 seconds. I want to show you some of the ideas that I have for saving water while still washing your hands really well. Yeah, I need to wash my hands.
Here's a great water-free way to wash your hands. Make sure that you get both sides of your hands. It's a really good idea to try to focus on your nails too. And be sure to get between your fingers. Just kidding, friends, don't do this. I don't recommend doing this. This is not a good way to clean your hands. Assistant Cinnamon is a good boy though, of course. But really, here's how you can wash your hands and save some water. Just get them wet in the beginning and then turn it off and then use soap. This soap is really cool. It's actually from my friend Educator Brian. He handmade it. It's really cool. So what you want to do is lather up so you get bubbles on your hand. Then you actually do want to start by focusing on your nails. You can kind of curl your fingers over and use your palm to clean your nails. Make sure you get both the back side of your nails and kind of under your nails. To get between your fingers, you can kind of put one hand on top of the other and just kind of run your fingers through the space in between your fingers. Then just do a little bit of last rubbing and then you can go back and turn the water on to wash the soap off. This is a great way to do a good, thorough hand washing while still not using very much water. One last way that I'll suggest that you help us all use less water is by reaching out. You can write a letter or even make a phone call to a company that you like and ask them about their water use. What are they doing to use less water? You have the power, and as a consumer, you can ask companies to do better.
What ideas do you have to use less water at home?
So we know that 97% of the water on our planet is salty. Can you drink salt water? Definitely not. And don't try it. Our bodies are not made to process salt water. You could get really sick if you drank a bunch of salt water. When you heat it up, water evaporates or turns into a gas. Does the salt evaporate too, or is it left behind? The salt is left behind. And that science lets us do something really cool. It lets us distill salty water. Distill means you basically turn the water into a gas and then trap that gas and make it turn back into water. And in that way, you can take salty water and turn it into fresh drinking water.
Great news! It's experiment time!
Let's see how this works by setting up an experiment. You just need a couple things. You need some water, you need some salt, and you need 2 containers where one will fit inside of the other. Then you need something clear to put over the top. I've got this kind of old plastic bag. Some people might like to use saran wrap. I also have a rubber band to make sure that it's a good seal. Another good way to reuse our experiment water. So we're gonna pour a little bit of water into the big container. Then pour some salt in and mix it around. Now you've got salt water, like the ocean. Usually in science, you shouldn't taste most things, but I know that these things are clean and they came right out of my kitchen. So I'll just make sure that this water is salty enough. Oh. Okay, next you're gonna put the smaller container into the bigger container with the salty water in it. Kind of put it about in the center, and it should be empty at the start. Then you're gonna take your plastic, your saran wrap, your old bag, whatever you've got, and you're gonna stretch it over the big container, and then use your rubber band around the big container to make sure that that plastic stays in place and also seals off your bowl. You actually want to make sure that your plastic bag isn't too tight. You need it to be able to sag a little bit. And then, oops, I forgot what the last material is. You need something that's a little bit heavy. I'm gonna just use a couple of pennies. And they should be pulling down the plastic a little bit in the middle, right over the middle of the small container. And then we wait. You can leave your container out in the sun. Ooh, I forgot there's no sun today. That's okay, I have something that pretends to be the sun. I have these indoor grow lights for some of my plants, so I'll try leaving it here and we'll see what happens.
Okay, so we're gonna cheat a little bit because it is just not a warm day yesterday. It's not a warm day today. So my distilling water experiment is just not working out because it's not warm enough. So we're gonna ask my snake linguini to just help us out with this experiment for a little bit. And I'm going to very carefully place this into his nice, warm, heated desert terrarium. And then I'm going to carefully monitor it to make sure that he doesn't get tangled in anything or anything like that. But I'm hoping that this will help our experiment a little bit. Thanks, Linguini!
It's been a little while, so I want to check on our experiment in Linguini's tank. You can see that water droplets are starting to form on top of plastic, but I think we need to wait a little longer.
Hey everyone, it's finally a nice sunny day here. And so I'm gonna try moving my experiment outside to use the real power of the sun to see what we can get done. Check it out.
Alright, so I've set my experiment out in the sun. I wanted to show you all of these different places I had to try putting my experiment because this is usually how science goes. You have to try a lot of different ideas before you find the one that works. It can be frustrating sometimes when it doesn't work out how you think it's going to. But If you can take a breath and walk away for a moment, usually it really does help you to think creatively and come up with new ideas. Anyways, you can see that it's starting to form bigger droplets. Because the pennies are in the middle, it kind of creates a downward slope. So eventually those drops of water roll down to where the pennies are and combine into bigger drips, and then fall off and drop into the smaller container down below. Here's a time-lapse and also sped up video. Can you see the water droplets forming and combining into bigger ones?
Okay, here is our moment of truth. We're gonna take the plastic wrap off of our experiment, and I think I'll even taste the water. All right, bottoms up. Cheers. Yeah, that tastes like regular drinking water. Okay, so we were able to remove the salt from the salty water just by letting the water evaporate and then condense, turn back into liquid water, and drip down into a separate container. We made drinking water out of salty water. This is a concept that people are using to make drinking water for people. There are places called desalination plants that take seawater and use different processes to take the salt out so that there's drinking water left over. I mentioned way back in the beginning that I wanted to talk about an innovation in making drinking water available to people. Because here in California and in a lot of other places, we're always worried about drought. We want to make sure that there's enough drinking water for people and that there's water left over for animals that live in fresh water, and really animals everywhere, since animals need to drink water too. Desalination plants might be able to help. And there are a lot of opportunities with desalination plants. There are also some challenges, like with most new technologies. And so we need to put our minds to coming up with creative solutions to see if desalination plants really can be a helpful and environmentally sound way to help us get drinking water.
There are big desalination plants in a lot of places in the world. This is one that's in Saudi Arabia, but we have several in California too. There's actually a really big one down in Carlsbad, the Carlsbad Desalination Plant. That one in Carlsbad, and a lot of them around the world these days, they don't use evaporation like we did to separate out the water and the salt. Instead, they use a process called reverse osmosis. This is where they basically force the water through filters that are, finer and finer and finer. At first, it's gravel and sand to catch some of the bigger stuff, and by the end, it's these really fine membranes that can catch all of the salts and other things that are left over in the water. And once those are out, you've got clean drinking water. Doing it this way does allow places to make their own water so that you don't have to move water so far. That takes a lot of energy. To get water all the way from the Bay Area down to San Diego, where that Carlsbad plant is, that takes a lot of energy. And so Carlsbad being able to make its own water, only 10 miles from San Diego, which needs a lot of water, does save a lot of energy. One of the major challenges with desalination plants is what to do with the water that's left over. Once you manage to separate out a lot of fresh water, what's left over is extra super salty. We call it brine because it's so salty. And there are a lot of questions about what to do with that brine. Because if you put it right back in the ocean where you got it from, then it's really going to change that local environment. It's going to make it saltier. And the animals there aren't really built for that. Different desalination plants deal with that brine water in different ways. Some are able to kind of be next door to a power plant, which makes wastewater anyways, and they just mix that really salty water with the extra water from the power plant that's used to cool things down, and then they release it into the ocean because it's less salty, because they've diluted it, they've mixed it up. That's what the plant in Carlsbad does right now. However, that power plant is actually going to be closing in the future. And so at that point, the Carlsbad desalination plant will have to come up with a new way to make sure that that super salty water isn't leaking out into the local ecosystem as it is. And that presents a new challenge, one that will require some innovative and creative thinking.
Alright, well, I'd say we got a lot of good science done over the last couple of days. We learned a little bit about where the water is on planet Earth. We did an experiment to learn about desalination. And we also learned about real-world examples of how people are taking ocean water and turning it into drinking water. I hope that this video makes you feel empowered. Empowered to use a little less water, to think about where our water is, and also, of course, just to do more science. Thanks for tuning in, and keep up with CuriOdyssey for all of our latest science videos.